grazing lands of the southern Great Plains sweep up from Texas through Oklahoma and Kansas. Millions of beef cattle graze here on native grasses, wheat, and other forages. These grazing lands support a substantial part of the U.S. beef supply.
All we have to do is drive down the highway, and we know how big the beef industry is to the southern plains.
But what happens when conditions here can't support the number of cattle we've seen in the past?
For cattle production groups, farmers, producers, they are very concerned because we had one big drought in Texas a few years ago, and many of those producers, they lost a lot of money.
Well, anyone that lives in the Great Plains or works in the Great Plains is very conscious of certainly weather variability.
I think one of the things that really got us started on this is if we think back just a few years, we were in one of the worst droughts ever.
So we had really just experienced first the 2006 drought, which was a very serious drought in Oklahoma, followed by one of the wettest years on record, certainly some of the biggest storms on record in 2007.
Researchers in the southern Great Plains began developing ideas for a multi-year grant project to address weather variability.
The project was awarded a $9.6 million grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and is generally referred to as the grazing cap. Now, a CAP is a coordinated agriculture project, and that enables us to bring together many facets of a problem or a question to look at that problem or question in its entirety as opposed to bits and pieces. I'm really fortunate that I'm representing the consumer on this particular project.
The grazing cap would bring together scientists from 6 institutions in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Dan Devlin is the director of the Kansas Center for Agricultural Resources and the Environment at Kansas State University and project director of the Grazing Cap Grant.
I think there's a real need for a project like this because of the impact of what they're predicting on climate change and how important the livestock industry is to our region.
The Grazing Cap has ambitious goals. First, to better understand the vulnerability of beef grazing systems, especially with increased climate variability. Second, to enhance resiliency of beef production in the southern Great Plains. Third, to assess consumer attitudes on the beef industry and on the environment. And finally, to safeguard regional beef production while mitigating the environmental footprint of agriculture.
One aspect of beef cattle production that gets a lot of publicity in the public as well as a lot of focus in the global climate change arena is the methane emissions.
Methane, a greenhouse gas, is an inevitable part of the beef cattle production, says Jean Steiner. She's the director of the USDA Grazing Lands Research Laboratory at Fort Reno, Oklahoma, and co-PI on the grant.
So we've done some, I think, really unique research to try to have a better understanding of enteric methane emissions in grazing environments.
Cutting-edge laser technology was used to isolate methane emissions during the grazing part of the beef cattle life cycle.
Technology was also used to recreate drought conditions throughout the plains using computer modeling.
A team of modelers was led by Ali Salih, who is the Associate Director of the Texas Institute for Applied Environmental Research at Tarleton State University.
So, as part of preparation, we simulate the model when it's really dry situation, and then we come up with some solution under those conditions so the producer have more, cattle have more resilience to this kind of conditions, and the farmers does not lose as much as money as before.
The Grazing Cap Grant also made room to hear from farmers and ranchers.
We also surveyed a large number of producers and said, what do you think? Do you think climate is changing any? And what do you know about it? Amazing enough, we had a large percentage that thought that they had seen some change in climate. Those are the people that are out there, living out there, and really telling us that in a lot of cases, they would like help, like to understand what they could do to adapt to it.
But there's one more group that's really important to the beef production process, and that's the consumer or the end user. So researchers asked consumers how concerned they were about the impact of beef production on the environment and helped them understand how they could reduce their own impact as well.
And school students were not overlooked, as curriculums were developed to broaden their knowledge of agriculture and the environment.
It's really been exciting just to see how they work with teachers and how they deliver that to K through 12. one of the big needs is to educate the young people, and then they can make changes when they get up to making decisions.
The science-based information made possible through the Grazing Cap grant is being used to help beef producers manage their operations more effectively and safeguard the rich resources of the southern Great Plains.